Okay, great. So, Sara, if you want to go ahead and take the floor, and then just let us know when you want us to change your slide.
I will. Thank you, Shelley. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right, great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to spend time with such a dynamic group of leaders. I've learned so much already today. I love the first keynote. Thought that was really great to learn more about overstock. I loved the panel, learning about what we can do to help our teams during COVID and learn more about self-care as well. So I wrote down a lot, actually, of things that I can take from that. I wanted to tell you a little bit more about myself and my career journey. I work in credit and collections at Comcast, managing equipment recovery, which is when customers disconnect. Sometimes they forget to bring us back equipment. And so my job in that aspect is to, remind them. I manage a vendor partner who does phone calls, and we send out boxes, and we do equipment recovery for that. I also manage all of our outside collection agencies. So if someone disconnects and they owe us a balance, we ask them to pay it, just like every other business. I have a specific focus on customer experience in this area, because I want people to know that even though they disconnect from our service, maybe they're having a hard time today, but hard times don't last, and they're always welcome back at Comcast, once we clear up that balance. So like most of you, I spend most of my time working, but when I'm not at work, I spend time with my family and friends. I also like to spend time volunteering in the community. A passion of mine has been to teach refugees English. It is so rewarding. In working with people from diverse countries, I've realized the beauty of diversity and how much can be learned from it. I wanted to take some time to share my experiences in leading a diverse team for many years. It's been quite a journey. I've made mistakes. I've had to apologize more than once, but through all the challenges, I feel like I've become a better leader. Next slide. All right, so why do we care about diversity and inclusion? It's the right thing to do, obviously, but it's more than just a section on a website or an objective on a PowerPoint. It boils down to money and business. Companies in the top quartile for racial and ethnic diversity are 35% more likely to make more money. For profitable firms that move from no female leaders to a 30% representation in leadership have an associated increase of 15% in net revenue. I do not have to tell you guys, but women make great leaders. We are more inclusive in decision making, and when we allow all the voices to be heard, we have a better outcome. Diverse groups also have a significant buying power. In the United States, 54 million people live with some form of a disability. They represent more than $200 billion in discretionary spending. At Comcast, through listening to our diverse voices of our customers and our employees, we now have an accessibility team that looks for ways to make our products easier to use for all of our customers. An example of this is our voice remote. It came from wanting to help people with limited sight or medical conditions that made it difficult for them to change channels on their video service. Now they can use the remote and have the freedom to watch whatever they want when they want. And that's an example of a company that's really looking to do the right thing as far as accessibility comes, but also it's great for everyone. Everyone loves that feature, honestly. 71% of the LGBTQ people say they would stay loyal to a brand that supports the community even if it were less convenient or more expensive. And that group has a combined buying power of $917 billion annually in the United States. Another reason to, really focus on diversity and inclusion is to be an employer of choice. Millennials make up almost 50% of the U.S. workforce. By 2030, they will make up 75% of the global workforce, meaning that it's incredibly important if we want to have the best employees, we really focus on, what they want. 86% of females and 74% of male millennials consider employers' policies on diversity, equality, and inclusion when deciding what company to work for. They're a very inclusive generation, and they demand the same from their employers. And more information can be found. I actually took that right off of our Comcast website. Next. Great. So there's a big difference between diversity and inclusion. One of my favorite things, because I always, was thinking, what's the difference? One of my favorite things is diversity is being asked to the dance. Inclusion is being asked to dance. Something I've learned over the years is that if your culture does not embrace different perspectives, we're not going to be able to retain diversity. Inclusion requires that everyone's contribution be valued and that all voices be heard. Next. So I want you guys to think about your team. If you can, take out a pen and a paper and think about who's on your team. Who are they? What's important to them? Who doesn't engage? What voices are missing? Are they single? Are they married? How old are they? Are they the oldest person on your team? Are they the youngest person on your team? Gender, how do they identify? Sexual orientation, what's their education level? What country did they come from? Are they from the United States? Is English their first language? Religion, in Utah it's often assumed that most people are LDS, but there's many different religions with many different traditions. The first step in creating a culture of inclusion is understanding what it is. With the multitude of differences that make up our diverse culture, you're going to make mistakes. And don't be afraid to apologize if you get it wrong, because we all will get it wrong at some point. So I worked in a small real estate office years ago. It was a small family-run business. The broker was a very good person. He's actually a very good friend of mine. But he used to leave me religious pamphlets in my mailbox, and because I'm a different religion than he is. And although I believe he had very good intentions, it was important that I felt safe enough to ask him to stop. Although I was not personally offended, others in the office were, and they were afraid to speak up. So it was important that I had a voice. So how can you find out what's important to your employees? There's lots of different ways. Tip levels, anonymous suggestion boxes. It can be electronic, which most of us would use, but you can actually just use an actual box if you don't have the ability to have an electronic survey. And again, employee surveys are awesome as well. Next. All right, so 5 ways I found to grow your team in diversity and inclusion this year is training. Training is one of the ways. that we can really focus. Most companies have some kind of unconscious bias training. It's important that we, take that, frequently, if not every year. If your company does not have this kind of training, partner with HR to find an appropriate training for your team. And then set expectations for your team. Ask for their help. Just let them know that you believe everyone on the team should have a voice and feel safe enough to speak up. Probably the most important part of this is to lead with heart. Empathy is the key to ensuring everyone feels safe enough to speak. Your gut will tell you when someone's being a little too quiet and maybe they don't feel safe enough to say what's on their mind. Start small. So a goal that I set some time ago was holding one meeting per quarter where everyone can share a tradition on what's important to their family. It can be something as simple as a recipe or a subject that they're really passionate about. Lead by example. Make sure that it's part of every one of your team meetings. Talk about it, embrace it. Make sure that everyone has that voice on your team. Starting team traditions, making sure that, everybody on the team is recognized and you guys have special traditions that are just your team traditions that amplify those voices. And include employees in finding ways to celebrate each other. The best ideas I've found do come directly from employees. And then hold your team accountable. The supervisors and managers in your organization, do skip levels, do employee surveys. Make sure that people feel that they've been heard and ask them directly, do you feel like your voice is heard? Another way, and it's been spoken about several times, so I lost my way of thought, but talking about mentoring. Include a mentor program in your organization. This allows people that may not be represented in your meetings to have a voice through mentors, and then build up their own leadership skills and build your team's bench strength. I was going to say it was the theme of the day, mentoring. So, right. Next. All right. So recognizing important days for your team. Take a look at these days. And here's a quick test to see if you can recognize what these days may mean to your employees. We should know what is important to our folks so that we can support them and allow them to be their true self at work. If you know about Ramadan, then you would know that people who observe Ramadan fast between sunrise and sunset. This means the best time to schedule an employee party may not be during Ramadan. If you want everyone to feel included, which obviously I'm positive that we all do. Next. All right, so let's talk about race. How do we care for people of color? We've all seen the news, and we know that there's a rise in hate crimes across the country. This directly affects our employees. I was talking to one of my friends who happens to be Black after the George Floyd murder, and she said the thing that was so upsetting to her was that she came to work and her leader did not ask her if she was okay or if she needed anything. She was traumatized and felt isolated because she did not have anyone at work to talk to about how she was feeling. She was expected to come to work and perform at 100% the day after watching someone that looked like her father being murdered. It made me realize that I had not been looking for those signs on my own team. So I did some internal work and research on how to help. Next. Okay, so how can we help? Vocalize, be vocal. Vocalize your awareness of what's going on. Tell your team that you care. You may have differing personal, political views, but those should not come before your need to care for your employees' mental health. Give time, not questions. It's not their responsibility to make us feel better. We should be checking on them. Don't expect people to be 100% the day after a traumatic event. Offer to extend deadlines or give time off. Listen to what people say and what people don't say. It's easier to listen to people who think just like we do, but true growth happens when we really listen to other perspectives. Watch for body language. Some people may not want to share. Some people may not feel ready. Give options. Do they need to take a day? Do they want to vent? What support do they need? Our job is to ask them. Leave the door open. We're going through some very hard times, and leaving the option open to talk to them, even days or weeks later, is ideal. Let them know that you're there for them. Most of all, be brave enough to have those hard conversations. Next, one of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou: "We should all know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all threads of the tapestry are equal in value and no matter what their color." Can you imagine a tapestry that only had white? It just wouldn't be a tapestry. So thank you so much, and I'm open for any questions.
Well, thank you. I mean, that was one of the best presentations I've heard on culture, and diversity and inclusion. And I like the example you used about between the two, because I think you're right. A lot of people do believe that it's kind of the same, but the example of being invited to the dance and then being asked to dance. So that's brilliant, and I'm probably going to steal it from you, so I hope you don't mind.
No problem.
So that, and ending with this quote, I think it just kind of resonates. So does anybody have a live question before I go and gather the questions that we've gotten in during the presentation? If you do, you can hit *6 and ask that now while I gather those written questions. Anybody with the live question? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I have one. This is Chelsea. My question is how to, let's say you have new team members, you don't know them very well, but how do you know, or how do you approach the subject without assuming that, say for George Floyd, let's just say that you're assuming that that's affected them. What if it did not affect them and then it offends them because you assumed that it did? Like, how do you approach the subject without knowing them very well and without offending? That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. And that's a good question. I believe that I haven't met anybody personally that's a person of color that this hasn't affected, but it could be. But how I would start it would be, I would tell them that I'm aware of the situation and that I'm feeling stressed out about it, and just ask them, are you feeling okay? Is there anything that you need? And I don't know that it's offensive to ask someone if, they need any resources. I think it's important as leaders that we have those brave conversations. And I didn't just have it with my Black employees, honestly. I had it with all my employees, because it's not just people of color that are upset by the things that go on in our country. You know, we have people, I had people that I had no idea that they had biracial children. And they said, you know, thank you for bringing that up. You know, this was a newer person to my team, but, you know, we're working really hard to have those brave conversations. And so it does get, you know, it's not, I don't think it's offensive. I think it's brave to say, you know, I saw this on the news. It affected me, and I wanted to make sure that you guys were okay.
Thank you. And then along the same vein, looking at those holidays, I would have no idea, you know, because you don't talk about religion at work, what days are important to them. And again, I don't want to make assumptions. So how do you
Right.
breach, or, you know, how do you talk about that without offending someone?
I think you just ask them what days they celebrate. I think that's, you know, it doesn't have to be a religious holiday. You know, I have Muslim employees that aren't strictly, you know, religious, but they still do celebrate Ramadan. They don't fast the whole time, but there are days that they fast so that they, you know, they share, you know, I haven't found people that aren't willing to share who they are. And I think it just depends on the culture of your organization. Our culture is really open, and so, you know, we talk about those things. Like if someone doesn't eat pork, we make sure that, you know, when we have lunches, that, you know, we make sure we have, you know, pizza that doesn't have, you know, any kind of meat on it, because most of the meat is pork. If we have, you know, any kind of employee event and we have a vegan, we do the same thing. And it's not a religious thing for the vegan most of the time. But we do, it's about respecting what they celebrate. Not necessarily from a religious standpoint, because all those holidays aren't religious, but some of them are really important to those people.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, definitely some great live questions there. Does anybody else have a live question that they would like to ask? You can do so by hitting *6. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and ask a written question, and then I'll give you a chance to ask a live question after the written question. So Michelle asks, how do you work with team members that start their comments with, if racism exists? How do you work with team members that start their comments with, if racism exists?
Well, I would answer that as, I would say that I personally believe that racism exists. We've seen it throughout history. We've seen it throughout the news. And, you know, and then I would go on to discuss the values of our company and how respect is really important to everyone. So even though they may not believe that racism exists, other people do, and we ask that they respect other people's beliefs.
Absolutely. That's a good. I like that answer, and it's easily said, and it's, you know, that's good to remember that one also. It's just great presentation so far, and I love the questions that are coming in for this one. Okay, so does anybody have a live question they want to ask before I read another one off? It's *6 if you do. *6 to ask a live question.
I'll ask another one. How appropriate is it to address the things that people share on their personal social media, as far as you know, their opinions of what's going on with race and diversity?
You know, it's going to depend on what your company's policies are about that. And it's going to depend, so I'll give you an example. If someone has on their personal profile that they work for Comcast, and then they post, racist jargon, that would have to immediately be addressed. Regardless of whether they're a frontline agent or a leader, if they have something that's offensive to the community and they also have on who they work for, that's a very different discussion than someone that has a really private social media presence, and they may post the exact same things, but it's only shown to their family. That's a very different conversation, in my opinion. We do have freedom of speech, but not freedom of consequences. So I always tell my employees, I'm not friends with any of my employees on Facebook as a policy. Personally, I think there are some leaders that are. I personally don't believe that I should cross that line. So I'm not personally friends with them, but I do know that there have been people in other departments where, we've let people go that have been, very, very harassing on social media when they've distinctly identified themselves as an employee.
Thank you. I guess my question, that does answer my question, but also some people would say that their opinion is not racist, it's just a fact. Like, it's just, this is what's going on. And so I just wish there were a way, or I don't know, how to address these personal or private things that they're posting on social media that aren't necessarily overtly offensive, but are going to offend someone because they're very strong opinions either way. Does that make sense?
It does. I wouldn't address anything that wasn't brought to my attention, honestly, because people do have the freedom to, to speak. There's freedom of speech. And if people, if I have somebody come and complain to me about a social media post, I would ask them to not, to block that person unless it's something, overtly racist or violent. It's not going to affect their work situation as long as they don't bring that attitude into work. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
But I try not to ever, know what's on people's social media that I work with that are, frontline employees, because I don't want to, I don't ever want to let my opinion of something that they may post affect our work relationship.
Right. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. There's some tough questions here, and I'm glad, that people are asking them, and because there's a lot of uncertainty, isn't there, in this? But it's good. Change is good, and these changes will help us, be better as individuals and as society. So I always say lemonade out of lemons. So that's definitely. These humanity grows and learns because of changes and because of things. So that's great. Does anybody else have a live question before I read off the next question? Would anybody else like to ask a live question? Okay.
I have a live question. In our organization, we're a tech company and heavily dominated by a middle-aged white male majority. And I firmly believe that inclusion and diversity really can't take hold in an organization until those people are on board. And I'd like to hear if you have had any specific success bringing those people along in your organization, where I often see eyes glaze over when those topics are raised.
I think I'm really lucky. I work for a company that has always, for whatever reason, as long as I've been there, has always been very inclusive and always talked about how do we help others, really worked in the community. And, I haven't had, there are people that aren't really on board, but they don't typically last real long. To be a leader in our organization, you have to be very focused on making sure all the voices in our organization are heard. We have an employee survey that goes out every month, and you live or die by those results. And if your team doesn't feel heard, they will share in that survey. And I think that that's probably been a really good tool to identify leaders that maybe aren't on board with making sure that everyone has an equal voice.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I agree. I think at the leadership levels that they're more compliant and see the value, frankly. I think I'm more concerned the people most people engage with daily are their peers, which are not the leadership of the company, right? So those same values that leadership, give that shadow of leadership, we might not see in the broader employee population. So I appreciate your comments. Thanks.
Yeah, I do think that it comes from leaders, though. If the leaders are talking about it, and if the leaders are supporting the company values, most people will get on board. You're not going to get everybody on board, and I do absolutely understand, because I work with a lot of technical folks as well. But it's not going to be everyone's passion, that everybody has to believe in the principles of the company to be successful. Anyway, that's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great answer to that question, to that live question. I appreciate everybody, taking the time and asking these questions. I have a written question to ask, and then if nobody else has a live question, we're going to go ahead and close out for this keynote. But my question that's come in from the audience, Kathy asked, do you have internal communications like newsletters or company-wide meetings where leaders are involved in discussions about difficult topics like political climate or things that happen that employees may be concerned about?
We do, actually. I am the co-chair of our Black Employee Network for the Mountain West region. The Mountain West region is Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. And we have conversations with employees in this group, and everyone can join the group. We have a saying, you don't have to be to belong, meaning you don't have to be Black to be part of the Black Employee Network. I'm not Black, so that, that certainly goes with that saying. But we have these conversations. It's called continuing the conversation, and we have open conversations around things like we had an activist in Denver who works with the Denver mayor's office come in and speak about what people can do, and we had a doctor come in and talk about COVID and how it's affecting persons of color in a larger it's affecting people of color more than it is affecting Caucasian folks. The other thing that we're doing is we have the president of the NAACP coming in and talking about voter rights and voter suppression. We have national talks where we've had several people come in and talk about leading through crisis and how to be an anti-racist. Some of the slides that I have coming up have some resources on them for you guys. You want to flip to a couple of the other slides. Oh, one more. Okay. So, you know, between the world and me, how to be an anti-racist. We've had both of those authors come and speak, you know, to the group. So we do have those kind of resources, and so I feel like I'm really lucky, and I think that talking about these subjects is important in every department, and you know, all the leaders are, you know, it's suggested that during your huddles or during your team meetings that you do talk about, you know, what's going on and if people need us for resources. And not everybody belongs to our Black Employee Network, but like I said, everyone's invited to all of the talks. And so we do try to, you know, when things like this happen, we do try to make sure that we're front and center, and we have those resources available in case people are feeling overwhelmed by the media, or they're feeling overwhelmed by what's going on. And just really want to make sure that, you know, we have open dialogue and that our people feel safe at work, feel safe to be who they are, and that they feel supported, because, you know, there's a lot going on in not just our community. I mean, Utah, for, you know, for good or bad, we have less crime than many other, for good, actually, we have less crime. But the bad part is that sometimes we are isolated and we don't believe what's going on in other cities actually affects our people, and it absolutely affects our people. And I think that, you know, having an inclusive culture isn't something you can do tomorrow. It's small steps. Like I said earlier, you can do it by starting really small and just mentioning things, and just, you know, if you just put it on a PowerPoint, or if you just put it in a you know, a goal setting, and you never talk about it again, and it's not part of the culture, it won't stick. It has to be something that you know, do every day, and you think about when you're making decisions on, you know, how am I being inclusive? Do I have all the voices in the room? And who's not being represented? And, you know, over the time that I've worked, which has, you know, been a long time, I found that that's the best way, is just to do it small pieces, and eventually it just takes over the culture. And hopefully your leaders buy into it as well, that, you know, you will be able to have an, you know, an inclusive culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great answer to that. I mean, just an all-around great presentation. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed learning, you know, more about diversity and inclusion, you know, especially in the current climate. You know, I think we all need to kind of step back and think about the differences, and understand that, you know, what offends you may not offend somebody else, and what offends somebody else may not offend you. And it's not easy, but I think that there's certainly an educated and right way of handling these issues in the workplace and in your personal professional life. So thank you so much for taking the time out today and sharing the presentation with us. Those links on the last slide, we'll make sure that all this is up in the membership directory, so you can, you know, listen to this presentation again. And of course, if you have more questions once you've listened to it again, or, you know, something pops up later, you know, you can always reach out to the member directory, or if you send us an email, or to get in touch, or we'll make sure that we get your, you know, your questions answered. So we're just a little behind today, not too bad, 10 minutes over, so I appreciate everybody's time, and appreciate, the like I said, the live questions. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude the Women's Leadership Day for Salt Lake City. I hope that at some point we're going to be there live and in person, so we can, all spend the day together and talk about more of these topics. I've enjoyed the panel. I hope you have, and the keynotes. Both keynotes were, I think, personally brilliant today. I know I'm a little biased, but I think that's okay in this sense. So just remember, you get all these membership benefits for the next 12 months. Use the member directory. Reach out. Send us an email. Let us know what you're thinking. If you want an introduction to someone, if you're looking for a mentor, if you want to be a mentee, you can always, reach out to us. We're more than happy to help or to make those introductions. Don't forget about all your membership benefits. Additionally, the monthly meetings, which you'll get an email about, the book of the month and the summaries. So again, thank you everyone for being a part of this today. Without your continued support, we wouldn't be able to have these. And now I'm going to conclude the Salt Lake City Women's Leadership webinar series. So I wish you all a good rest of your week. And until next time, this is Shelley Fitzgerald signing off. Take care.